Thank you very much, Margie. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yes,
Well,
we can hear you.
It's a privilege to come to Hollands this evening for me and this morning for you. I've been there once before, and it'll be my pleasure to present to you. And I encourage you to ask questions because that's the way it works best. Now I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and go into slideshow mode. Okay, so there we are. As Margie said, I work at the University of Queensland, and I'm also a visiting professor at Tyrone University of Medical Sciences, but mainly I work in my own general practice. So I do 3 days a week in the general practice and 1.5 days equivalent with the university, and that's almost all online, just like this. So I'm from a little island off the east coast of Australia, off Brisbane. You can see here this nice map of Australia. And this map has been is malignant art. It's been etched on this Anzac veteran's jawline. Now, Anzac is Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, and that was the Army of Australia and New Zealand, which was formed in World War One and continued through World War Two, and there's still a very strong association between Australia and New Zealand. And we have Anzac Day on the 25th this month, which is next Thursday, when we celebrate our defeated Gallipoli, and we celebrate the people that fought for the freedom that we have now. So this was one of these old diggers. We call them diggers because they dug trenches. And he turned up with his, and I'm telling you, when you see a work of art on the skin, and it's not a tattoo, the hair on the back of your neck should rise because that's not normal. Okay, and in this case, it was an invasive melanoma, but this gentleman survived that to die of a healthy old age. Now, I live, as I said, on an island off the coast of Australia, and this is a frequent visitor to my house. And you might all recognise this as an iconic Australian bird. It's nowhere else in the world except Australia, or in a zoo in Amsterdam maybe. It's a kookaburra. And this fellow will come up and he'll take food off a plate that I'm eating from without it batting an eyelid. You can see Australia in the background there. That's how close I am. I have to go to work by boat. And it gets interesting when it's windy and rough. Now, I've got a conflict of interest. This is a great book, and if you don't have it, I recommend that you buy it. It's the best dermatoscopy book that you'll find. It was co-authored by my nurse at the time, Oksana Marazava. She did all the graphics in the book, and I gave her 100,000 photographs, literally, and she sorted through to get the best ones for the book. And she is now a dermatologist in Belarus because that's where she comes from originally. So she went on from being a nurse in Australia here to being a dermatologist in Belarus, not far from you. Now, this is what I've treated between 2007 and 2023 in my general practice. So you can see there 24,063 lesions, all documented prospectively on the Skin Cancer Audit Research database. Now, if you Google SCARD, that's a database that people who treat skin cancer can record their lesions prospectively. You put down what you think it's going to be. You put down why you're doing the procedure, whether it's to exclude melanoma or to exclude non-melanoma skin cancer, or neither, like cosmetic. And then when you get the results, you put them in. So we can do lots of prospective analyses from this. And I recorded all these 24,000 lesions prospectively on SCARD for all those years. So I've got lots of data that I'm analysing at the moment. Now, all of these 24,000 lesions are also photo documented, clinical close-up and dermatoscopy, polarised and non-polarised. So it's a big database. And you can see of all the things that I treated, 68% were malignant. The number of lesions excised to find each melanoma is approximately 3.5 over that period of time. Started off a lot higher, about 13 when I first started. I'd cut out 13 things to find a melanoma. So it's okay to have a learning curve. It's okay to cut benign things out if you're doing it for a good reason. And with experience, you cut much less out. The average for me is 3 point something, and currently it's about 2. So for every one we cut out to find that's benign, we find a melanoma. Now, this is my career from 1976 as a GP until 2023, 1,116 melanomas. You can see in the first 30 years, I found 84. In the last 17 years, 1,032. And one of the big factors there was that I started using a dermatoscope. Okay. Now, mentioning dermatoscopes, I use Dermalite to use Dermalite 2HR, which is to track the foot plate and look at the lesion without making contact. That can also be used in the theatre to check your margins. And I use the Heine Delta 30 Pro. Now, I noticed, Margie, you had a Heine Delta 30 in your picture. And I'm sure that you know it doesn't show polarizing specific white lines, don't you?
Yes, that's
You know
correct. And
yeah.
I understood that the Heine 30 Pro will visualize the shiny white lines better than
Absolutely.
the previous one.
Yeah, that's what I use now, and it shows them beautifully. I actually pointed this out to them originally that there was a problem, and then when they did nothing about it, I published it, and then they did something about it, and the result is very, very good. The 30 Pro is a good instrument, but if you have a Delta 30, be aware it's not showing polarizing specific white lines, and you will see how important they are as we progress through this presentation.
Yeah, we had a news topic on it, so I think most of the participants are aware of
fantastic.
So thank you.
Very important. Now, we probably have some experts here on pattern recognition, so I'm going to just test the rest of you to see how good you are. I'm going to show you 2 skin lesions, and I want you to see how long it takes you to work out which is innocent and which is suspicious. Are you ready? There you go. They're both skin lesions, they're both tattoos, and you wouldn't have hesitated to work out which was innocent. Okay? And pattern recognition is something we do innately, and so do animals. You recognize your mother's face without an algorithm. Okay? And the same thing works with pattern analysis, on the other hand, is describing the patterns in a reproducible and a teachable manner. This pattern recognition is really, really important. Now, you don't have any problem with any of these animals. You recognize a koala and a giraffe and a monkey. And the one on the bottom right, yeah, you know it's a tiger by now, but it's not the same immediate recognition because it's not symmetrical. We are programmed to recognize symmetrical faces. Now, with lesions, it's the same, but you have to learn it. With faces, we learn it as we go, but with lesions, you've got to actually learn it. So the 5 benign categories that cover 99% of what you will come across: nevus, seborrheic keratosis, which includes other benign keratinocytic lesions like sol lentigo, wart, porokeratosis, and then this one here, very, very common. It's not a BCC, sebaceous gland hyperplasia. Now, I had a patient today who had about 15 on her forehead. They're very, very common, and you'll find them on mature age patients. Every 3rd or 4th patient, you'll have a few there to look at. And you need to recognize all these things without having to think about it. Hemangioma, dermatofibroma. So these are the 5 common benign things. The beauty of it is you can become an expert very quickly at recognizing benign things because you can see them every day, but you have to deliberately look at them because there are many, many different variations of nevus, many, many different variations of seborrheic keratosis, and of hemangioma and dermatofibroma. And every now and then, someone will cut out a dermatofibroma because they didn't give it a squeeze and feel it and recognize it the way that you can. When you examine a patient, Don't just look at the lesion, feel it. Run your finger over it. Like a rough surface of a seborrheic keratosis is a very, very useful clinical sign. Always take into account not just the dermatoscopy, but also the clinical and the tactile clues that are there. This lesion down on the bottom right, does someone want to tell me what that is? It's not symmetrical, so you can't recognise it as one of the benign lesions. Can someone tell me what they think that is, this lesion?
I think it's a melanoma.
Yeah. And is it all melanoma or is there something else there?
No, I think on the bottom part there's the change, and it's probably because of before existent nevus, I think.
Yeah. So this is the nevus. This is a melanoma arising in the nevus. What sort of nevus do you think this is?
A junctional nevus.
It's a congenital type nevus. It's a congenital type nevus, right? And it has a fading border over the total periphery as respect to the nevus. It's got one pattern, one colour, one border, and it's not a dysplastic nevus. What's the most likely nevus for a melanoma to arise in association with? So I'll give you a big rest after this, Jessica, because you're answering all these questions, and that's very, very good. What's the most likely nevus to be associated with a melanoma?
The Spitz nevus.
Which one?
The Spitz?
Spitz.
Spitz or the
Spitzoid?
reed? The nevus of reed? No.
They're pretty rare, actually, Spitz nevi. They're pretty rare. I see a lot more melanomas than Spitz nevi. And you know, 75% of melanomas come out of clear skin, but 25% are associated with the nevus. It's the, well, who thinks it's a dysplastic nevus? That's most likely. Anyone want to tell me they think it's a dysplastic nevus? That's most likely. I can see some worried people.
Yeah.
Does anyone think it's a dysplastic nevus? It's most likely to be associated with a melanoma. Well, I'll tell you this, and I can send the reference if anyone needs it. But the least likely nevus to be associated with a melanoma is a dysplastic nevus. The most likely is a dermal nevus. The simple dermal nevus, like the one people pluck the hair out of their chin, that's the most likely to be associated with a melanoma. And usually it's not a dermal nevus that you can see clinically. It's one the pathologist finds incidentally. But the most frequent nevus associated with a melanoma is a dermal nevus, and the least likely is a dysplastic nevus. The appellation dysplastic is of no prognostic significance at all, either to the patient or the lesion. You can't diagnose dysplasia without histology. There are no clinical features that define dysplasia and dysplastic nevus. And it's the least harmful nevus of all. So I just want to throw that in for food for thought, and I'll move on. Now, what's that? Eva.
Verruca seborrheica.
Seborrheic keratosis, is that what you said?
Yeah.
It sounded like that, yeah. So this is pattern recognition, okay? This is pattern recognition. You didn't need to think about that. Just like you recognise your kids and your husband's face, you recognise that as a seborrheic keratosis, right?
Yes.
Now, as far as seborrheic keratoses are concerned, okay, it's very important to exclude them along with the other 5 common benign lesions before you apply an algorithm. And I'm going to show you here, you've got a lesion there on this man's shoulder. It's a standout lesion. It's a pattern smasher. People would call it an ugly duckling. Okay, and you put your polarized dermatoscope on it, and it's asymmetrical, it's chaotic, it's got lots of grey colour, got peripheral black clods, got lots of things that would make you concerned. But before you cut it out, you switch to non-polarized dermatoscopy, for which you have to put gel or fluid on, and you can see it's a seborrheic keratosis because polarizing filters degrade the colors because they have filters. The colors are degraded. So with the polarized on the left, you don't see these beautiful white clots, and you don't see the true gray color with the polarized. But non-polarized dermatoscopy gives you true colors, okay, because there's no filters. So this is one way of sorting out seborrheic keratoses. Always check them with non-polarized dermatoscopy before you cut them out. Now, Gerline, what's that?
Carleen, je bent, you're unmuted.
I think a BCC.
Absolutely. And that's pattern recognition. See, you can even pattern recognize malignant things. And I can tell you now that when you've got a lot of experience, you won't use chaos occlusion or prediction without pigment. You look at something, you'll say BCC, melanoma. You'll say what it is, right? But the algorithms are a scaffolding on which to build your accumulated experience. And when you're not sure, you can fall back on an algorithm to help your thought process. What's that, Gerline, while you're there?
I think this is because of the chaos and melanoma.
Can't be a BCC because it's got a little bit of network up here, and it's got the chaos of Armageddon. And that's the only thing that can give you that is exactly what you've said. It's a melanoma, right? And that's how I sort of look at that one. It's so obvious that, you know, it's like looking at a mammoth with a microscope and making a diagnosis. So pattern recognition with a melanoma. Now, Raymond, what's that? You'll need to unmute yourself, Raymond. You're still muted. That's okay.
I think it's a
What do you think?
melanoma.
Okay. So for this one, it's not pattern
Well-
recognition. We might need to do pattern analysis because it's not a melanoma. So we'll come to this one later on, right? We'll come to it later on. Now, yeah, so we'll come to it later on and we'll sort it out. But I'm glad you said that because that's what I wanted you to say. It's a pattern analysis one. You won't recognize that one by pattern recognition. Now, what do you put through an algorithm? Well, first of all, always, before you use an algorithm, say to yourself, can I make a pattern recognition confident, specific, benign diagnosis? If you can, you move on. You can't afford to put every lesion through an algorithm when someone's got 500 spots. You can't do that. You'll burn out before you finish your first day. If you can't make a pattern recognition, then you put it through chaos, clues, and exceptions if it's pigmented or whatever you want to, or prediction without pigment is the one that I use for non-pigmented. And if you apply this pattern analysis algorithm and everything is fine, you can say no and you can leave it. But with chaos and clues, you must always, if it's a lesion of concern, if you can't make a confident diagnosis, you must also put it through exceptions. So call it chaos, clues, and exceptions. If it's a lesion of concern and you're not cutting it out with chaos or with clues, you must consider exceptions before you move on. And if it comes up with any of those, then it gets either excised or monitored. You haven't got to cut everything out. You can monitor things for short term to save cutting out lots and lots of things. So here we have the algorithm as it actually works. This is the flow chart, the up-to-date flow chart. You've got a pigmented lesion of concern. Not just a pigmented lesion, but it must be a pigmented lesion of concern. It might be the patient's concerned, or it might be that you can't give it a confident diagnosis. And if it's asymmetrical, you look for at least one of these clues. We'll go through them in detail. And if you find one, you either cut it out or monitor it. And if you don't find chaos, if you don't find a clue, you then put it through the exceptions before you make a final decision. If it's got no chaos, you then put it through exceptions and you make a decision. Two of the exceptions are for cover all lesions and two are for special sites. So changing lesion on adult, all lesions, a nodular or small clue, a small lesion with any clue, that's for any lesion. And the head and neck and volar, these are for special sites. So the chaos factor. Now, it's not just asymmetry, it's more than that. It's the chaotic behavior of malignant tissue. That's what we're looking for. And nature favors symmetry. So electromagnetic fields, gravitational forces, they pull objects into symmetrical orbits. Homo sapiens, symmetrical. Surface tension causes spheres to form in water. Jellyfish is symmetrical. If a tree is not symmetrical, it falls over. Trilobites were symmetrical. So nature favors symmetry. And this includes gravity, electrical magnetic fields, surface tension, biologic feedback mechanisms. But malignant cells defy natural laws. And not only is this lesion on the right asymmetrical, it's chaotic. It's consistent with the underlying chaotic behavior of malignant tissue. The nevus on the left, is that a dysplastic nevus, Marielle? Is that a dysplastic nevus? It's a congenital nevus. When you see this beautiful concentric symmetry, that's a congenital nevus. That's genetically determined. It's not a Clark or dysplastic nevus. So, pattern plus colours plus clues equals diagnosis. That's revised pattern analysis. Okay. And there are only 3 structures you need to remember: lines, circles, and clots. That covers it. 3 pigmented structures. There's no more. It used to be 5, and I'll explain that in a minute. It's now 3. We like to keep things as simple as possible and to make them even simpler when we work out how to do it. There are 6 types of lines because they're very specific: reticular, branched, angulated, that means polygons, parallel, radial, and curved. And each of these is defined explicitly. So a line is a 2-dimensional continuous object with length greatly exceeding width. A circle is a curved line sensibly equidistant for a central point. Sensibly means it includes ellipses and distorted circles. A clot is any well-circumscribed solid object, any size, any shape. That's it, 3 things. And structureless is an area with no basic structure predominating. And we used to have pseudopods, but a pseudopod is actually a line with a terminal clot, so you don't need a different term for it. And we used to have dots, but a dot is just a minute clot. So that's pretty good. It's nice and simple. You can, any pigmented structure, it can be defined as a line, a circle, or a clot. Now, patterns plus colours plus clues. Now, you probably are aware of the reason for different colours of melanin, different depths in the skin. Okay. So, without atmosphere, the sky in daylight is black, like on the moon, it's black. Air particles scatter light, which becomes visible to an observer, and short wavelength blue light is scattered more than long wavelength red light. And so the sky appears blue because the atmosphere particles scatter the light, and they scatter the short wavelength light preferentially to the long wavelength light. So when melanin is on the very surface of the stratum corneum, it's a very efficient pigment. It absorbs all the light which reaches it. It's black. When it's the dermo-epidermal junction, some light is reflected back from the particles of the epidermis, and it's shifted away from black, and that makes it brown. So nevi, solar antigenes, these are all brown because that's where the pigment is, at the dermo-epidermal junction. When it's in the deep dermis, there's a strong Tyndall effect because the collagen fibrils scatter light just like the atmosphere particles do, and they scatter back the blue light, and it appears deep blue with non-polarized dermatoscopy, and not quite as deep a blue with polarized dermatoscopy, because polarized filters, they degrade colors. When the melanin is in the superficial dermis, the papillary dermis, there's a minor Tyndall effect, so there's a shift towards blue, which is grey. So black, brown, grey, and blue. And this means that we can tell what's going on biologically by the colours that we see. We can tell where the melanin is. It should be here. It shouldn't be there, or there. Melanin has no biological function apart from in the epidermis. So when you see a chaotic lesion, which obviously is not a blue nevus, with blue chaotically distributed, that means the melanin is where it should not be, and it can only be that deep if it's in cells. So it's nested pigmented cells deep in the reticular dermis, giving you the blue color. So pattern plus colors plus clues. We selected 9 clues arbitrarily to point to generic malignancy. That's chaos plus clues points to malignancy. So it's derived from revised pattern analysis, patterns plus colors plus clues equals malignancy. Chaos, asymmetry of pattern and or of color and or of border abruptness. It doesn't matter what shape the lesion is, it's whether the border is abrupt in some parts and gradual in other parts asymmetrically. So on the left, diagrammatically, this looks like a very regular lesion, but it's chaotic because the pattern here is different to the pattern on the other side. If you draw a line through there, it's symmetrical, but if you draw a line at 90 degrees to that, it's not, and that's how it works. This one is an uneven lesion, but the pattern, the color, and the border abruptness are the same all over the lesion, so there's no chaos. No chaos. Here we have 4 lesions. We have 3 here where there's 1 pattern, 1 color, 1 border, 1 pattern, 1 color, 1 border, 1 pattern, 1 color, 1 border. They're all no chaos. It doesn't matter about the white dots where the hair follicles come through. That's not of any relevance at all. It's the pattern, the color, and the border abruptness. This one over here, the pattern on one side is different to the pattern on the other side. The color varies, and the border abruptness in some parts it's abrupt, in some parts it's gradual. Chaotic lesion. You've only got to have chaos of one of those, pattern, color, and border abruptness, to give it chaos. Clues. Well, I've ordered them more logically in the upgraded version of the book. The first one is just color, grey or blue color. The second one is a structureless eccentric area. So the second one is structureless. The third one is clods. Then you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, and then vessels polymorphic. So there they are: color, structureless, clods, lines, and vessels. Make it easy to remember. But I can tell you now that the first 3, most malignancies will be diagnosable on the basis of grey or blue color. Always think of that first, because it's almost universally present, not always, but almost, in pigmented malignancies, whether they be melanoma, pigmented basal cell carcinoma, or pigmented SCC in situ. This algorithm covers all the pigmented malignancies. So here we have a case. So Janeka, this case here, I'm going to get you to talk through that. Okay, chaos or no chaos? You still have to unmute yourself.
Exactly. I lost the mouse.
That's fine. Chaos or no chaos?
I do see chaos.
Absolutely. And no hesitation. No hesitation. So there's the list of clues there. What clues can you see in this lesion?
When looking at number 1, I do see gray color.
That's great. Always look at that number 1 first, because as like I said, you won't be disappointed. It's there. And that's all you need, right? But you can keep going if you want to. There's an eccentric structureless area down here, where there's no basic structure predominating. An eccentric structureless area must be at least big enough to be a pattern, like at least 20% of the lesion, and that one is. And it can't be skin colored, and that one's not. And it must be eccentric, it must be off to one side. But that's an eccentric structureless area down there. And there might be some thick lines reticular up here, where the lines are actually thicker than the holes that they surround. But I'm helping you out because you were so good and got the first one right.
Oh, thank you.
And it means I can move a bit faster too.
That's
so
good.
they're the clues that are there, and it's the melanoma in situ. So that's not hard, eh? That's fantastic. So you can have a rest now. I'll do this one. When you look at this back, okay, how many Sasha, how many of those lesions did you look at with your dermatoscope?
Sorry, how many lesions do I have to look at with my dermatoscope?
With your dermatoscope, how many are you going to look at here?
Well, I would probably look at all of them because I'm still
Yeah,
quite
the answer, that's the
new.
right answer. All of them is a good answer. You can't get wrong with that, right? And we're going to include this one here.
Yes.
We can even see it's a bit irregular.
Yeah.
And you can see there that it extends out here. You've got to look at that before you put the dermatoscope on it, because when you put the dermatoscope, it makes this look less significant out here. Okay, but you already know that the lesion extends out there. Chaos or no chaos?
Well, I do find it chaotic. I find it asymmetrical in the color.
Yep, and the pattern, because the pattern on the right is different than the pattern on the left.
Yes,
exactly. Can you see any other?
I see that I don't see gray or blue, but I do see thick reticular lines.
Yes, very good.
Let me see. I don't see any peripheral clots or pseudopods. But
What about number two? What about clue number two?
Yeah, I guess you can say that. Yeah, I do see a structureless
See,
area.
this is the structureless area because there's no lines predominating, there's no circles predominating, and there's no clots predominating. And it's big enough, and it's off to one side, so that's an eccentric, and it's not skin coloured. It can't be skin coloured. And you can go back to the previous picture to see that it's brown, not skin coloured. Okay, so you use all the information you've got, and you can see here that I've ordered these things so that the most sensitive clues are at the top, the most specific are at the bottom. Okay, so always look for grey and blue and structures eccentric, and then start looking for the rest. Fantastic, that's very good. Another melanoma in situ. So, Ilona, this is your one, Ilona. Chaos or no chaos? Right, I can't hear you, and I think you have turned your mute off.
Yes, I cannot hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you now. That's good.
Oh,
Hear
that
me?
was me.
That's
So,
good.
or maybe in the chat, Ilona, as an alternative.
Okay, so Ilona can't. Okay, so will you take it, mate? Mate, you take it.
Okay, I will take it. That it's I would say no chaos, but
And you're absolutely right, because it's concentric. Got the pattern of clods in the middle. You got a structureless pattern around that. You got a pattern of lines around that. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
And that's beautiful concentric symmetry. That's typical of a congenital nevus, and it's not consistent with the chaotic behavior of malignant tissue. There's nothing there consistent with the chaotic behavior of malignant tissue. So
it's a
with
benign
practice, you look at
nevus pattern.
yeah, it's a nevus. It's a concentric pattern of a totally benign nevus, and the patient still has this. And this picture was taken over 10 years ago. Fantastic. So this one here, let's pick on this time. Miranda.
Wait, I think it's no chaos.
Okay, I haven't shown you dermatoscopy yet. I haven't shown you dermatoscopy. What I'm going to ask you is, what could that be? A new dark lesion like that on the foot of a 40-year-old lady.
I think also congenital nevus.
Yeah, and what else could it be? From what you can see there, what else could it be? Could it be a seborrheic keratosis?
I don't think so.
Could it be a very dark pigmented piece? It could be a lot of things. Could it be a nevus? Could it be a nevus? A new lesion at 40?
Yeah. And it also doesn't look like a hemorrhagia.
No, it doesn't look like a hematoma or no, it doesn't look like that.
I don't know.
But there are lots of things it could be, right? It could be a melanoma. Doesn't look like one, but it could be. it's not likely to be a nevus. It still could be a nevus, but a new lesion at 40 like that is not likely to be a nevus. At 18 or 25, yes. Maybe even 30, maybe. But at 40, it's certainly not at 60. So these are the things you're thinking, right? And it doesn't look like a melanoma, but when you put the dermatoscope on it, what do you think now?
I think it's a verruca, a seborrheic lesion.
Seborrheic keratosis. So
Seborrheic.
what features can you see there of seborrheic keratosis? You tell me what features you can see.
Yeah, the
Can you
white.
see can you see multiple white clots?
Yeah.
Well, you can see a couple. Can you see multiple orange clots?
I don't see orange. Yeah, I see a few. Yeah.
Do you? Okay. All right. So can you confidently say that that is a seborrheic keratosis? Can you say that with confidence and move to the next lesion?
Yeah. Now I'm a bit in doubt because
It doesn't look like the first one. Doesn't look like the first one I
patterns.
showed you, does it?
Yeah.
It doesn't look
So
like the
maybe
first
it's
one I showed
still
you.
chaotic, and then I have to look for clues.
Yeah, can you see any? Okay, we'll go to the next thing where you can look for clues. There they are listed up on the left-hand side. So
Yeah.
if it's chaotic because of these spots up here,
Yeah.
right? That makes it chaotic. Otherwise, it's symmetrical. It's only asymmetrical because of these three black plots. So what clues can you see now that we've decided it's chaotic?
Yeah, I think in the middle there's a bit of bluish.
There's a lot of grey there, a lot of grey.
Yeah. And also the thick reticular lines.
Well, I don't know if they're thick. They've got to
below?
be thicker than the holes that they surround. But what about clue number 3?
Yeah, above at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, definitely.
Black.
Now, but the thing is, if you were confident this was a SEB-K, you wouldn't put it through the algorithm, would you?
Yeah.
And that might be a problem because this is a melanoma in situ. The border's not right for a seborrheic keratosis. It must be abrupt border, not with bits projecting out like this, like these radial lines. You don't expect that on the border of a SEB-K. And if you compare this to the SEB-Ks we had earlier, it's quite different.
Yeah.
And also the other clue, if you ran your finger over it, I can tell you it was absolutely smooth, not rough like a seborrheic keratosis. But this is a great case. Okay, it illustrates quite a few things. Thank you very much for that. Grey or blue colour. And the thing is, these clots give it both the chaos and the clue. Without them there, it's a symmetrical lesion. Structures in the centre, lines around the outside, grey in the centre, brown around the outside. But look at this lesion. This lesion is totally chaotic. It's totally disorganised internally, consistent with the chaotic behaviour of malignant tissue. Now, I don't like metaphoric terminology, but this is a dog's breakfast. This lesion is a dog's breakfast. Do you have that saying in Holland, dog's breakfast? Okay, they don't have it in America either. And they asked me what it was, and I said, a dog's breakfast is a breakfast that's been into the dog, out of the dog, and back into the dog again. That's a dog's breakfast. And the chaotic behaviour of malignant tissue gives you a dog's breakfast. When you look at this, when you've looked at 1,000 nevi and 1,000 seborrheic keratoses, this does not fit the picture of either. Now, when I say there's 5 common benign things, in the context of this lesion, you only got to worry about nevus and seborrheic keratosis. You haven't got to worry about hemangioma, dermatofibroma, sebaceous hyperplasia. In the context of this lesion, it's just 2 things to consider: SEB-K and nevus. And this doesn't fit the pattern of either when you've looked at 1,000 of each with your dermatoscope. Now, this little lesion here, who's worried about that lesion? That one. Well, I wasn't. I missed it, but my melanographer, who's the co-author of the book, she said, what about this? And she put the dermatoscope on, and I said, well, that's a melanoma. It's got chaos and it's got radial lines. pseudopods. And it was a 2mm diameter invasive melanoma. And it's only got chaos of pattern. The colour's one colour brown, the border's the same all the way around, the same abruptness. It's just chaos of pattern. So the pattern on one side is different to the pattern on the other side. The pattern there is different to the pattern there. And it had pseudopods. Now, this is a really good case. This is a 27-year-old young lady. This is on her shoulder. And let me have a look. Who have we got? Hilke. I hope I say these names right, eh? But you've responded, so I must have said it right. So would you say there's chaos or no chaos? No chaos? I can't hear you, but I can see you shaking your head. That's good. That's okay. You can do sign language. That's quite okay with me. So this is non-polarized. So this is polarized dermatoscopy. Then we put our polarized dermatoscope on it. Right? Chaos or no chaos? No. Now it's got chaos because the top's different to the bottom. This side's different to that side. Okay. Now you've got chaos and the clue of white lines. Okay. The clue of white lines. And these are polarizing specific white lines, which you would not see with a Heine delta 30. And so you would not make the diagnosis because without the polarizing specific lines, it's fine. It's a clot pattern, congenital nevus, but with the polarizing white lines. Now, look at what's going on here. Around the outside, you can see terminal hairs of a congenital nevus. Where the white lines are, there's no terminal hairs. So this is a melanoma, a thick invasive melanoma arising in a congenital nevus, not a dysplasia nevus, a congenital nevus. We published this one as an example of a lesion you could not diagnose without polarized dermatoscopy. A 29-year-old young lady, very important. At that age, she's got dependent kids. Not like me, if I die, it's no big deal because I'm old. But for someone young with dependent children, it's really, really, really an important diagnosis to make. So that's white lines we've covered. Now we're moving on to the sole of the foot. So here's the lesion. You can see it there. You can see it there. So Laura, chaos or no chaos? You find how to unmute. If you move your cursor down the bottom, it'll come up where you mute and unmute.
Yeah. Ben ik
Great.
niet te horen?
Yes,
Yeah,
we can hear you.
because-
Yeah, sorry. I wasn't responding to Laura because it's not my name, but
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
very sorry.
Jeanette.
yeah,
Janet.
it's Janet. Yeah, it's fine. Is it Gales? Well, I see a pattern in it, but it seems a little bit symmetrical, but I'm doubting.
It's one or the other. It's one or the other. Now,
Yeah.
if you can't work it out, what you do is you go to patterns, colors, and border. Right now, what pattern is here?
Pattern,
Is it
yeah, of
yeah.
lines and
yeah? Is it
also,
symmetrical or asymmetrical?
um,
Don't be too picky. Just look at it and say, are those lines distributed symmetrically or asymmetrically?
yeah, I would say it's asymmetrical.
Would you?
But
Okay. Well, you've got lines through
also
there.
I see
And
lines
you've
as
got
well.
lines
Yeah.
here and lines here. If you put a line,
Yeah.
through there, that side's the same as that side. If you put a line through there, the pattern there's the same as the pattern there.
So it is, sorry, it was so quickly. It was symmetrical.
Yeah,
you
so
said.
if I put a line that way
Yeah,
and look at each side, the
Yeah.
pattern is the same on each side. Then
yeah,
I put one at right angles to that, and
Yeah.
the pattern is the same on each
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
So with the pattern, it's symmetrical. With the color, how many colors are there? One color or more than one color? Just one or more than one?
yeah, I would say, yeah, one. It's brown.
So if it's one color brown, it can't be asymmetrical of color.
Mhm.
Now the border, Are the borders symmetrical? In other words, is the border here the same as the border here, and the border here the same as the border here?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. So there's no chaos.
No.
So you look at the pattern, you look at the color, you look at the border, no chaos. Okay. This is a normal acral nevus. You see them all the time.
Mhm.
And it's got parallel. When you look at the nevus, you look at the edges to see where the lines are, and you see the lines are in the narrow furrows.
Mhm.
The narrow furrows. You don't look in the middle. There's pigment everywhere. The lines are in the furrows, right? Furrows are fine. Ridges are risky. Furrows are fine. Ridges are risky. That means furrows are fine because they're good, and also they're fine because they're narrow. And ridges, when you get pattern on the ridges, that's a sign of a melanoma. Okay.
What is a little bit confusing for me is that it looks like there's also pigment in the, not only in the furrows, but also in between. So that's what
There is.
made me
There is, and
hesitate.
that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where the pigment is. It matters where the lines are.
Okay, that's
It matters where the lines are, and the lines are judged at the edges of the lesion. Okay, so at the edge, the lines, the pigment is clearly forming lines that are narrow, and that lie between the ridges. Now, the ridges are defined by these openings of the sweat ducts. They open onto the ridges, and the lines are in the furrows in between them. Pigment can be anywhere, but the lines are definitely in the fine furrows.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good case. It's a good case. Now I'm going to show you another case. Here we have a lady. She's 50, got this lesion under her foot, and there we have it now. Margie, is that symmetrical or asymmetrical? Chaos or no chaos?
There's no chaos.
Good. It's perfectly symmetrical. You've got a pattern of lines, and in the middle it's also structureless, but on the outside it's definitely lines. Okay. The color is dark brown going gradually out to light brown. And when you've got two colors, dark and light brown, with a gradual transition, it's one color brown. If there's a sharp demarcation between dark and light, you can call it two colors, but it doesn't matter because it's symmetrical anyway. The color distribution is symmetrical, and the border is the same all the way around. There's no asymmetry in this lesion at all. Where are the lines? Are they in the fine ridges or the wide furrows? Sorry, are they in the fine furrows or the wide ridges? Where are the lines?
The lines are ridges, so it's a rich pigmentation.
Yeah, they're rich. And then you got the openings of the eccrine glands in the middle of the ridges, and the lines are the pigment's everywhere, but the lines are on the ridges, and you judge that at the outside of the lesion. You can even see pigmented circles where the malignant melanocytes are invading the sweat ducts.
I've never seen them on acral site circles.
There you go. And on the face, it's from invading the hair follicles, and on the acral side, it's invading. And this is the only picture I've seen that shows that. The only one I've seen, but very clear. This was a melanoma in situ. Now that's the way to find a melanoma in situ when it's early like that, because I'd say that's the way to find a melanoma on acral site, because it's completely cured by excision.
It's a very difficult one because of only there's a symmetric lesion with only brown pigment, and then
if you didn't
the
put your
rich
dermatoscope
pattern.
on it and you weren't informed, you go straight past that.
Yes, it's tricky.
So typically, melanomas on acral sites are lethal because they're diagnosed late. But with dermatoscopy, there's no need for that to be. Now, the other clue was when I said to her, "How long has that been there?" She said, "What? What?" Now, this can only be one of two things: a congenital nevus or a melanoma. You don't get acquired Clark nevi on the soles of the feet, the palms of the hands, right? You don't get them there. Only congenital nevi and melanomas. So if this hasn't been there since she was a teenager, then it's a worry. And when you put the dermatoscope on, when you recognise that parallel ridge pattern, It's a no-brainer. It's easy. And this is a 50-year-old woman. Believe me, from where I'm looking, 50 is very young. She's still got a lot of time in front of her, which she has been enjoying. But she wouldn't be if that wasn't diagnosed at this stage. The thing is, your GPs, you don't see 100 melanomas a year. You see 4 or 5, but it's really, really good to be good at diagnosing those 4 and 5. That's really good. Make a lot of difference for a person like this. Okay, now this is a lesion on a 25-year-old school teacher. Okay, it's been there for 6 months. So we need to hear for some blokes. So we've spoken to Raymond. What about, oh God, name disappeared. I'm looking for a bloke. Yeah, your picture's under Hilke's picture, but I can't see your name. You've got a hit. When I click the arrow, you know who I'm talking. You got a blue thing hang up on behind you.
You meant Raymond?
I can't see his name. And when I press the arrow, he disappears.
Okay.
So is it Raymond?
I think it's Raymond.
Raymond will do. Raymond will do. Hang on. I don't know how he hides his name. That's pretty clever. But anyway, yeah, you don't know. It's Michelle. Michelle. I now can see your name. That's good.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So,
No, they're not
so
so
what do you think about what you can see here?
Yeah, what I see is parallel lines, and they are all the same same thickness, I guess. But I see different colors. So I see gray and brown.
So what you're seeing is lines parallel chaotic.
Yeah.
Not symmetrical, is it, when you take the colours and some of these lines are finer than others, but anyway, you're right, the different colours. What do you think about this stripe on the nail up here? What's significant about that?
Yeah, different width if you see it from a macro view. And what I find very typical is that on the tip you see also, if you look on the vertical, you see also faint pigment.
Yeah, that's pseudo Hutchinson sign. You're just seeing the pigment through the cuticle.
Exactly.
Cuticle's very, very narrow, and you're seeing pseudo Hutchinson sign, not real Hutchinson sign. That's just seeing the pigment on the nail plate through the cuticle. Well, that's fine. What I want you to just note here is that it's wider here than here. See that? It's wider over the cuticle than at the distance. And what does that mean?
It's growing.
Yeah. So when this grew out, the lesion was smaller than it is now.
Yeah.
This is this is a 25-year-old school teacher, and one of his students went up to him and said, "Sir, you have a melanoma on your thumb."
Whoa.
That's what she did. And he ignored her. This is a true story. So a month later, when she said to him, "Sir, have you been to the doctor about your melanoma?" He said no. She rang his mother up.
Wow.
She rang his mother up. And he ended up with the doctor and ended up getting referred to me. So we got one's poster. She actually saw a poster in a doctor's surgery with a nail apparatus melanoma on it here. And so on the basis of that, she told her teacher he had a stripe, a melanoma on his thumb. So, you got to see a lot of melanomas to get one of these. There's about 600 regular melanomas to get one on a nail.
We see the posters like this in Holland too.
Yep. Hey, these are the same incidents in all skin types. The same incidents in black skin as in white skin. Nothing to do with the sun. The same with the ones under the feet. The same incidents in black skin and white skin. So they're not more common in Asians and Africans. Sorry?
You see it more in younger age?
No, you can see them at any age at all. and I've seen quite a few in people in their 30s, 40s. So yeah, they are when they happen, they kill people because they're not diagnosed. They're misdiagnosed. They have often and once when you have a melanoma on the skin, which becomes invasive, while it's less than a millimeter Breslow, it's only got a 3% mortality. When you get a melanoma on the nail matrix, once it becomes invasive, it's got a 50% mortality straight away, regardless of the Breslow thickness. Very important one to diagnose in situ. Very important. So this young lady is a silent author on this paper. Her name's not there, but she's responsible for the paper because we got another one a couple of weeks later. He sent his sister's friend along with a stripe on her toenail, which was also a melanoma. So we got to publish it. This paper with David Wheaton and myself just points out that unless the pathologist does immunoperoxidase stains, he can't render a negative diagnosis of not being a melanoma. You've got to do the peroxidase stains to see the extent of the proliferation. Now,
I have a question, Cliff.
Certainly, yes.
The prevalence of acral melanoma is similar for black and white skin. I thought
exactly
it was more prevalent among Asian and people with
No, it's the same in all skin types. And it's not more prevalent in those Asian and darker skin types. It's the same prevalence, but because it's the only, they don't get the other melanomas. These are relatively more common compared to other melanomas. But in actual incidence, it's the same in all skin types.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now we'll make a point here. Lines parallel are chaotic, yes, but any longitudinal melanonychia, a stripe going from the proximal nail fold to the free edge of the nail, onset after puberty, with documented widening, requires a biopsy, whether it's chaotic or not. Onset after puberty, stripe the full length of the nail, with proven widening of the stripe, requires a biopsy. It doesn't need to be lines parallel chaotic. Now, this man's got a lesion on his back.
Oh, there was a question in the chat as well.
Yep.
Sasha is asking which stain needs to be done to determine it's not a melanoma.
Okay, so what you've got to do is you do a biopsy. The biopsy has to be from the nail matrix, which is under here. So I can send you, if you remind me, Margie, I can send you a video, a YouTube link of me doing a nail matrix biopsy. But you need to remind me because I'll forget.
My question is, which
I'll send you a link to a YouTube video which you can watch. It only goes for 10 minutes and you'll see it done. You've got to take tissue from the nail matrix, which is under here. The nail matrix extends all the way to the lunula, but the part that's the melanoma is rising from might just be from back here, even though it goes right through the lunula. You've got to take the biopsy from right back here. So I actually separate the nail from the nail bed, make an incision on each side of the proximal nail fold and pop the nail up like the bonnet of a car and take the biopsy under direct vision of the pigmented part of the nail matrix. So you remind me, Margie, I'll send you that.
Yeah, well, remind. We would like to see that video. Thank you.
That's great. So this one here, is it pigmented or not pigmented? Hilka, pigmented or not pigmented? Can't hear you, but I know you're saying it's pigmented because of the grey pigment here, right? Any pigment at all, you've got structureless brown, you've got some grey. Any pigment at all of any significance makes it a pigmented lesion. So you do it by chaos inclusion. I don't know why I can't hear you, but I knew what you were saying. So it's chaotic because these grey dots are down here, they're not up there. And look at the vessels. What could this? They're polymorphic vessels. Could it be a BCC with these serpentine vessels? Yes, a BCC can have these serpentine vessels, but it doesn't have a vast pattern of dot vessels. When you see a vast pattern of dot vessels, as well as linear vessels, that's very, very suggestive of melanoma. This was an invasive melanoma. So the clues here are it's chaotic, it's got grey and blue colour, and it's got polymorphic vessels. And polymorphic vessels, both linear and dots, especially with a vast pattern of dots, it's going to be a melanoma. Okay, now this guy has a typical Australian skin. He's got 10,000 solar lentigines on his back, and we look at the big one for sure. So, Loet Burka. I can't see your picture, but I can see your name. Loet. Am I saying that right?
Loet Burka.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, but I can hear it when you pronounce it. So, are you there, Loet Burka, to participate?
Okay, she might be busy, Simon. I know you're there because I can see your face. So, Simon, is this chaotic or not chaotic? Can't hear you. I don't know why. Just thumbs up if it's chaotic. Thumbs up if it's chaotic. Okay. Has it got clues to malignancy? So, has it got the first clue, grey colour? Thumbs up if it has. Yep. Has it got lines angulated? Yeah, up here. These are beautiful angulated lines, right? Polygons, angulated lines. And this is a really, really useful clue. There's the guy who invented this clue. His name is Jeff Keir. And you probably can guess why he's smiling. That's why he's smiling, okay? He's happy. And he published these for the first time before anybody else did. And these are a really, really valuable clue. They're a very specific clue in a chaotic lesion. Here's some examples of angulated lines or polygons. Here's the examples. Here's the examples here. Here's a beautiful example here. Now, what they correlate with is here we have the vessels of the dermal plexus, which are visible because of sun-damaged skin. Okay? These are normal dermal plexus vessels. Here we have the same pattern, but it's pigmented. The same pattern, but it's pigmented. Thirsty melanophages heading for a drink from the dermal plexus. Thirsty melanophages heading for a drink. What it is in my opinion, is melanophages taking antigens back to the lymphatics, which run parallel to the vessels. So macrophages with relevant antigens for the immune system from the melanoma, heading for the lymphatics, which run parallel to the dermal plexus vessels, giving you these pigmented lines which are aligned along the vessels. Okay, now that's only published in my book, but it's clearly true, and no one can prove it wrong. We still have to demonstrate that the melanophages are there, but until someone comes up with a better explanation, that makes sense to me. Now, so thanks, Simon. I don't know what's wrong with the sound, but how about iPad Van Scarlett? iPad Van Scarlett. Can you hear me, iPad Van Scarlett? No. Maybe not.
Scarlett left. I don't see Scarlett anymore.
So Freya.
Sorry,
you there, Freya?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So this is the little lesion here. Yeah, this is the lesion we're looking at, right? This is a 60-year-old lady. She's coming with a keratosis on the back of her hand, which is nothing. And when I examined her skin, I retracted her bra strap and found this little thing under it, which she had no idea was there. Do you think that's sun-damaged skin?
It's under the bra, so it depends how she's
there's all the skin here. Do you think it looks sun-damaged to you?
Not really.
That looks like Dutch skin to me, not Australian skin, right? That looks like sun-protected skin, and certainly under the bra strap. What about this little clinical? What do you think of that?
it looks symmetrical, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Would you be worried about it?
Not immediately.
No. So we'll go to the dermatoscopy.
I
Can
think
you
it's
give that a
still,
confident diagnosis? Can you give it a confident benign diagnosis?
I see symmetrical, so I don't see chaos.
But can you tell me that's a nevus, or can you tell me that's a seborrheic keratosis? Because they're the only two differentials out of the 5 common benign things that matter for this lesion. So can you say that's a seborrheic keratosis? Have you ever seen a seborrheic keratosis that looks like that?
No,
Have you ever seen a nevus that looks like that?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen so much nevus under the dermatoscope.
So when you get back to work today, you're going to look at lots and lots of nevi and lots of seborrheic keratosis, right? Because you need to be able to say to me, there's no seb K or there's no nevus that looks anything like that. Because there's not. There's not. And I've looked at thousands and thousands of lesions, and there's no, I didn't know what it was, but I knew that there's nothing benign that looks like that. Now, let's analyse it because it's lesion of concern, because I can't give it a benign, you can't give it a benign diagnosis. So we can't, because it's symmetrical, we can't look at clues. They're irrelevant in a symmetrical lesion. We've got to go through the exceptions. Now, there's one exception of a changing lesion on an adult. There's another exception of a nodular or small lesion with any of the clues. So this is 3 millimeters diameter, so it's less than 6 millimeters, so small, and it's nodular, because you saw the close-up image. Can you see any of the 9 clues in there? Because it's a smaller nodular lesion. Can you see any of them?
So sorry. So now you're looking in one of the one of the clues of 1 to 9.
Yeah, and you start at the top. Can you see any of the clues there? Because it's one of the exceptions is any nodular or small lesion with any of the 9 clues. This is nodular and a small, and it's a lesion of concern. So we're looking for any of the 9 clues.
Peripheral black clots.
How about grey colour? The first one.
Yeah,
There's more grey colour here, we say in Australia, than you can poke a stick at. That's full of grey colour.
So that's
See all this grey?
gray color.
That's what grey looks like.
Okay.
Yep. Now, what was the thing you said just before?
The black peripheral clots.
Yeah. And they're not so black, but they're peripheral clods. Now, peripheral clods are not one of the 9 clues. But what do peripheral clods tell you?
That it's growing?
Absolutely. So it's now a changing lesion on adult. She didn't know it was there. I've never seen it before, but that's a dermatoscopic clue to change. Peripheral clods, radial lines, or pseudopods, all this mean exactly the same thing. It's a changing lesion. This was a nodular melanoma, 3 millimeters diameter and 1 millimeter thick, Breslow 0.9 of a millimeter. This was an extremely relevant diagnosis. Now, these are my patients over 17 years. These are my patients with invasive melanoma. So there are 200, hang on, I'll go back. 177 patients, 210 melanomas, which were invasive. And there were 10 adverse outcomes. 3 that died from melanoma, 6 of the metastases and still surviving, and 1 who died of other causes but had a positive sentinel lymph node biopsy. So 10 adverse outcomes out of 210 melanomas, 177 patients. It's over 17 years. Now, this shows you that the brown ones are the pigmented. These are all the ones with adverse outcomes. The brown ones are pigmented. The red ones are amelanotic. And the ones with the black border are nodular. Now, nodular melanomas, like this lady had, made up only 8% of all invasive melanomas in my series, but 45% of the ones with adverse outcome. 45%. And amelanotic made up 16% of all invasive melanomas, but 20% of the ones with bad outcomes. And of the ones that died, they were all nodular. All nodular. One was amelanotic, but they were all nodular. So a nodular melanoma is a really, really relevant diagnosis. Now, on the left here, we have a growing nevus on an adolescent. On the right, we have a nodular melanoma. And this lady with a nodular melanoma, that image was taken in 2013, that's 10 years ago. She's fine because the Breslow thickness was less than 1 millimeter, 97% disease-free, 20-year survival. She's fine, okay? Because a nodular melanoma, when you diagnose a nodular melanoma, less than 1 millimeter thick, you have almost certainly altered that patient's prognosis to survival rather than premature death. Now, this is a growing nevus on an adolescent that hasn't been cut out because you expect that on an adolescent that's got exactly the same pattern as the melanoma, exactly the same structural center, clots around the outside, right? What's the difference? Okay, one difference is this guy's 21 or 22, this lady's 60. This is normal at that age. The other difference is this is a dog's breakfast. This melanoma is a dog's breakfast compared to this, which is a nice, orderly lesion. This is a very important distinction. This talks about the chaotic behavior of malignant tissue. Even though it's symmetrical, it's chaotic. Any questions about that? Okay, I'll move on.
Now,
Now,
pardon me.
yeah.
May I ask you,
Certainly.
in the clues to malignancy, to melanoma concerning color, the clots, the black color or the peripheral clots, how is it necessary that they are black?
For a clue of the 9 clues to malignancy, we've selected black dots and clots because that's due to pagetoid spread. And we've selected them peripherally because they can be, you can get pagetoid spread centrally in an irritated nevus. But when it's peripheral, it's specific for pagetoid spread in a melanoma.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason. But peripheral clots of any type, when they're circumferential, even when they're peripheral clots of any type, do mean the lesion is growing. And in the context of age, that can be a clue by being an exception.
Okay.
Growing lesion on adult. But if peripheral clots that are black, at any age, you're a clue to melanoma. And peripheral clots that are brown are a clue to a growing lesion. So that's where the context of the age of the patient comes into it.
Okay.
Does that make it clear?
Yes, I understand. Thank you.
We try to make it clear all the time. We take suggestions.
Mhm.
Now, this one here, now, iPad, Van Scarlett, you're back. You're back. iPad, Van Scarlett. Can you hear me? I know your first name's on iPad, but do you know who this is? Margie, I hear you. All good?
Yes, I can see Scarlett. Can you unmute yourself and participate in the case?
Ja, ik ben,
Okay, so what
er zit er iemand een loodgieter bij mij in huis, dus ik heb hem even gedempt vandaar.
Okay, can you participate, Scarlett?
Yeah, I got a question for you, Scarlett. So maybe we don't always need a dermatoscope. What do you think this lesion is?
Depends on, well, it's an old lady and I see signs of UV problems. So it might be something.
Okay, let's have a look at that.
This is, yeah. And then you see.
What do you think? What do you think it is? What do you think? What do you think it is? We haven't used a dermatoscope.
A PCC, a plavezel cell carcinoma. No,
Yep,
a
so
basal.
it certainly looks like a BCC. Would you cut it out?
Yeah, BCC.
What sort of margins would you put around it if you cut it out?
I can't hear you. Sorry.
No, what sort of margin? Would you do a 2 millimeter margin to excise it, or a 3 millimeter margin?
2 millimeter to start with.
Yep. So you cut it out like around there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the point I'm making here is that, yes, that's a BCC, but that's a melanoma. So you need to put your dermatoscope on that one as well. And if you did that, you'd see
Oh,
this.
yeah.
So can you give that a confident benign diagnosis?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, can you give it a confident diagnosis of a nevus or a solar lentigo?
This might be, this also might be a, not a melanoma, but how do you see that? A malignant lentigo.
Well, a malignant lentigo is a melanoma.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It's a melanoma in situ, a malignant lentigo. So, and the thing is, the important thing here, the borders are not consistent with a solar lentigo because they will be abrupt, uniformly abrupt. And this is not consistent with a nevus because there's no nevus that looks like that on the sun damaged skin on the head or neck.
Yeah.
And when you've got a lesion, and you might say this is a symmetrical lesion, but it's on the head or neck, so you've got two exceptions to consider.
Yeah.
Any grey colour, there's no grey colour there, or any pigmented circles. Any pigmented circles, and here you've got circles, 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 circles. So this only applies to lesions of concern because a solar lentigo can have circles too. But if it hasn't got the morphology of a solar lentigo because it hasn't got the borders of one, then the pigmented circles become a very valuable clue. And this is a melanoma in situ.
Okay.
Now, this is Finbar-McGrady. And I can tell you now, Margie, we're not going to get to non-pigmented lesions today, but that's okay because it's important to take all the questions. Are you happy with that? Because we're going to finish chaos and clues. But
Yes,
we're not
that will
going
be
to
fine. And we plan another session
absolutely.
in a couple of months.
This man is named Finbar-McGrady. Where do you reckon he's from? Finbar-McGrady. That's an Irish name. Look at his skin. There's no sun damage there. And you know that accent is a risk factor for melanoma. Did you know that? If you've got a name like Finbar-McGrady with an Irish accent, you're safe as a bank. If you've got a name like Finbar-McGrady with an Australian accent, you're in deep trouble. Now, this guy has an Irish accent, and he was a doctor who came to a session like this that I gave about 10 years ago. And he came up to me after the session. He said, I'm out in Australia from Ireland, and I'm here because in Ireland we only have 600 melanomas a year, but they all die. And I want to learn how to diagnose them earlier, and I haven't seen one yet. And he'd been in Australia 6 months. And I said, well, you've sat through this session. You'll find a melanoma within a couple of weeks. And I got this email from him a week later. Hi, Cliff. This guy was worried about a Seb-K on his arm. I advised a skin check and found this. That's what he found, right? This guy's got a lot of freckles, but this little one here looks a little bit different, shape. That's a close-up. Chaos or no chaos? Anyone can answer. Chaos or no chaos?
Chaos.
Chaos.
Clues to malignancy? Clues to malignancy?
The
Gray
color?
Brown, grey.
Blue
That's
color.
exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah, colors.
And lost by melanoma virginity. That's what he said. Clark level 2, Breslow 0.3 out. That was his first melanoma, and he found one every month until he went back to Ireland. And there we are in the most bombed hotel in Europe a couple of years later. It's the Europa in Belfast. And he's got 100 GPs there, and we're going through the same sort of stuff that we've been doing here tonight. So he's very active now in education of GPs in Ireland. Now, this is the case that we had earlier that we said was not a melanoma. So I want someone to volunteer, won't pick on anyone, to analyse this with me. Who'd like to do that?
I will like to do it again because I said it's a melanoma.
Because it was your case. It was your case. So, chaos or no chaos?
It's chaos.
Clues to malignancy?
Yes, peripheral radial lines.
Okay, that's all you need. That's all you need.
Yes.
Now, what are the possibilities of a malignant lesion with lines radial segmental? What are the possibilities?
BCC,
Yep.
melanoma.
Yes. What else?
Uh,
What's the other malignancy that's common? Pigmented squamous cell carcinoma in situ. That's what it is. But this is to show it doesn't matter when you're using a decision algorithm whether you get the right diagnosis. It just matters that you get the right decision.
yes, put it
You don't need to get the right diagnosis. I thought this was a melanoma when I cut out. I was actually very disappointed when it came back a pigmented SCC in situ, but the patient was very happy. So that's the thing with these algorithms. They won't always give you a specific diagnosis, but they'll lead you to a correct decision on most occasions. Now, any questions about that case? In Australia, we get lots of pigmented squamous cell carcinoma in situ because of sun-damaged skin. They're really, really common. And they are the most frequent thing that I'll mistake for a melanoma and get it wrong. The most frequent thing, not a nevus, but a pigmented SCC in situ.
Now, can I ask you something?
Yes.
How many millimeter March did you excise this the first time before you got the diagnosis?
So I missed the question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you excised it because you suspected to be a melanoma.
Correct.
But how many millimeters March did you take the first time when you excised? Was it 2 millimeters, 3, 4?
No. I always excise suspected melanomas with a 2 millimeter peripheral margin undermined in the fat layer, because you don't want to cut out harmless things with a 5 millimeter margin right down through the full thickness of the fat. Because if you do that, you can disrupt the lymphatic drainage, which impairs the usefulness of any sentinel lymph node biopsy. And also you'll put big scars on people for nothing. So for our protocol here for a suspected melanoma is an elliptical excision biopsy with 2 millimeter peripheral margins undermined in the fat so that the specimen has a layer of fat all over its base. Then when you re-excise a melanoma, you excise it according to the Breslow thickness. So if it's in situ, 5 millimeters peripheral, right down through the full thickness of the fat, because the hair follicles can carry in situ melanoma into the fat. So you must excise at least as deep as you do width. And if it's invasive melanoma, 10 millimeter margins down through the full thickness of the fat. And if it's over a millimeter thick, we send it off to a surgeon or a multidisciplinary clinic for consideration of sentinel lymph node biopsy. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Now, here we go. Now we're going to see how good you are, right? I'm going to show you each of these lesions dermatoscopically, and I want you to say cut or leave. So I'm gonna someone who I haven't picked on yet. Heidi, have I picked on you yet? Heidi? Maybe not here. Okay, who'd like to volunteer for this one? For the wolf? Who'd like to volunteer?
I'd like to volunteer.
Fantastic. So I'm going to show you, first of all, number 1, which is up here. Cut or leave?
Leave.
Okay. Number 2, out by the left cheek, cut or leave?
Leave.
Number 3, cut or leave?
Leave.
Number 4, cut or leave? Gets a bit harder, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. I was thinking dog breakfast, but then the wolf is in between. Yeah. I think I would leave it because I'm looking at the pigment of the lesion and think it's quite symmetrical, quite colorway.
So what you're doing is you're extracting the coating pigment in your brain and looking at the lesion.
Exactly. I do
Like
see
CAT
some.
scanner would do.
Yeah, well, I'm starting to doubt, Cliff, because I do think to see some polygonal lines, but I don't know.
No, they're just curved lines. They're just curved
Okay,
lines.
in that way, I would leave it. Please.
Okay, this one.
I try to get away with the pigment. I think also leave, because I only see a little bit brownish.
This one.
Oh, I would cut that out.
Now, was that hard? Was that difficult?
I was a bit doubting, but looking back, it's okay. Yeah, it's good.
And the other thing is, when you're looking at a lesion, always look at it in the context of the other lesions around it.
Yeah.
Because that's relevant, right? Don't just look at the lesion the patient's worried about. Look at the rest.
Yeah.
Now, that's what it was. It was raised. It was an invasive melanoma. It's got chaos. It's got white lines.
White
Okay.
lines.
It's got a peripheral clot, which just indicates it's growing. Okay.
Yeah.
So how good is that picture, eh?
Nice.
How good is that? Right between the eyes, like you couldn't get it more even between the eyes. And when we cut it out, that's what it looked like. So that's nice surgery by my colleague who works with me in the practice. I don't do any surgery now. I'm over it. I let him do it. He does such a good job. And I'll just make the point, do people use shave biopsies in Holland to remove melanomas?
No, we do a full excision, so a total
Right,
resection.
fantastic. Because if this wolf had had a shave biopsy first, right, he would have lost his eyes. Because the re-excision after shave biopsy is larger than the re-excision after a elliptical excision biopsy. But I don't have to worry about that because you don't do them over there, which is fantastic. So it's 6:28. I know you've all got things to do. This is the prediction without pigment one. This is one I'd love to do next. And what I do to make up the extra time next time is throw some cases at the end.
Great. Yeah,
but I think this is a
let's
good
leave
time.
it there. Yes, it's
Good time to stop.
Yeah, since
So
we have
I'll
2
stop
minutes.
I'll stop the share. And
Yeah, it
there
was
we
a
go.
really great lecture, Cliff, and very interactive. Really enjoyed that. And it's very nice to see this chaos include method. It was very inspiring for us to detect the dog's breakfast and to know what to do to get the right decision. So that was very nice that you said that as well. So thank you very much that you
My pleasure.
taught
My
this
pleasure.
to us all this morning. And we are looking forward to the next session, and we will plan it after summer. So wish
That's
you
great.
all a pleasant work day, and for you, Cliff, a very pleasant evening.
Thank
And
you very
thanks
much.
again.
I really enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for your
much.
participation. It was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Really.
See you later.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.